Don't overlook the Minnesota Vikings just because they're 1-4 and don't have Justin Jefferson. It's a winnable game for the Chicago Bears, but it's not going to be easy.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into this crossover Thursday, Locked On Vikings, Locked On Bears podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Our crossover Thursday is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use our promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Luke, it's a tumultuous time for both of these two teams. I imagine, and I know for Bears fans, the biggest Viking storyline is Justin Jefferson on injured reserve. Is there anything else that stands out beyond that, or what's sort of the reaction so far in Minnesota?
That is the catalyst for any other stories that you're going to see this week for sure. Justin Jefferson's on IR. He's got a hamstring injury, out 4 weeks, probably more. That is going to put the Vikings offense to the test, right? They have spent a first-round pick on Addison, a second-round pick on TJ Hawkinson, first and second-round picks all over the O-line, tons of money on Kirk Cousins. This has been an offense that they have invested in outside of Justin Jefferson. So now we have to see, all right, was all that a waste? And is this really just a team of Jefferson merchants? Or can they actually put something together without their superstar? But I think the reaction to that news has not really been, okay, how do they make the offense work? It's been, okay, who are they trading before the deadline? It's like everybody just wants to make this an NBA team and you know, sell the whole thing for parts. People want to trade Jefferson at the deadline. Although I've seen more of that from from national media and stuff and people who don't really understand the situation. But it's, we're at the blow it all up, season's over, fire sale kind of moment. And I think Vikings fans could use a win.
Yeah. So how, I guess, legitimate is that thought? Obviously, we understand fans are quickly rutted. They're just trying to do the team building strategy. But from the Minnesota side, right, there's been some speculation as to whether, that Justin Jefferson could just be shut down for the whole season. Because why would he want to come back and play towards the end of a contract where, for a bad team that's not going to make the playoffs? And then if he would consider that, if they would consider that, then would they consider trying to sort of slow play into the tank again? Not NFL teams always try to win. You don't have outright completely giving up and waving the white flag. Right. And you're still going to start Kirk Cousins. That they bench him.
Unless you're Steven Ross, and there's a whole thing about that.
Yeah.
By the way, Brian Flores, Minnesota Vikings. So that ain't happening.
Yeah. So that's kind of my point, right? The Vikings are still going to treat this season as though they think they could still make the playoffs.
Sure, right? I mean, look, they can look ahead and say, hey, well, but what if we rattled off 4 wins, and then suddenly we're 5-4 and we feel better, right? That's the way they're thinking. As realistic as you do or don't think that is. But in terms of getting rid of pieces, look, Kirk Cousins has a no trade clause, and he's not going to quit in the middle of the season, go uproot his family, go to another place that might not even give him a contract. He's not going to agree to that, and the Vikings aren't going to agree to that either. And start Jaren Hall all year? That would be deeply insulting to the rest of their roster. That would be genuinely disrespectful to the rest of the people on the Vikings. They're not going to do that. Same idea with Justin Jefferson, who they want to lock up for the future. They want him to be part of the future, right? Think about if Justin Jefferson was on a different team, you'd probably want to trade for him, like everybody does. I think I've seen somebody who covers every single team being like, what would, or I've gotten at DMs being like, what would you trade for Jefferson? It's your left arm and drive into the ocean. That's the price.
Not even the number 1 and number 2 overall picks from the Chicago Bears.
I don't think I could do it to the Bears. I don't think I could live with that. So sure, you might be able to offload pieces that are maybe on their last year that you don't think are really going to be part of the future, that aren't particularly vital, that wouldn't ruin the season if they left, but I think those are more minor things that might happen. I don't really see them doing a fire sale. That's just not really the way that Kwesi has operated so far.
It's amazing what getting a a win can do to sort of turn around some of that feeling. Because of course, that's where
Yeah, you guys are probably feeling great right now, right?
Yeah.
Like you beat the Commanders, the Vikings are falling apart, like
yeah,
Packers are falling apart.
we went from the whole sky is falling, and I mean, I was ready to fire Matty Bruce. I still am, but like I was calling for
I listened to that. That show was awesome.
after the Broncos collapse. But like all of a sudden after one win, it's like, okay, could you beat the Vikings and have the first back-to-back wins in Bears team in Bears history under Matt Eberflus, and maybe they have the Raiders after that? Like, start to talk about having 3 wins in a row. Like,
Yeah,
whoa, wait a minute,
get a streak together and get some momentum, and suddenly the season could be what you thought. So I guess let's flip to like the bigger stories of what's going on in Chicago right now, coming off of finally getting a win and a dominant one at that on prime time, showing everybody, look, this team can be something. Do you feel like the Bears are on a track where record wise, you're in a hole, right? But do you feel like the Bears are on track to be a team that maybe does steal a whole bunch of wins and prove, hey, this rebuild is going somewhere?
A whole bunch of wins is a little far for me. To me, it's like been beaten, battered, and bruised long enough to where I still need to see it for more than one game. I think the Commanders are not as good as maybe they were getting credit for. I think that defense, especially, like they didn't do anything to really adjust. Even Matt Eberflus said on Wednesday, like, yeah, we kept taking deep shots, and they kept saying a single deep safety, so we just kept taking deep shots. Like they just didn't adjust defensively at all. And of course, the Broncos before that, one of the worst defenses in the league. And so to me, it does feel like the Bears have had really favorable matchups in a lot of ways the last 2 games where the offenses looked great. And I still think they're going to continue to some offensive success, but I don't think this defense has really made a ton of progress. They've just played against some kind of struggling offenses and some quarterbacks that haven't been able to really take advantage of what they do. And maybe the lack of Justin Jefferson will make the Vikings another one of those types of games where
very possible
that big playmaker to really attack you on that end. So, but again, I still feel like there are some really real deficiencies here to where I don't know that there's a scenario where Matt Eberflus fully saves it, like wins enough to save his job. But is there a scenario where Justin Fields continues to play well for the rest of the season and maybe saves his job? That's not totally out of the question at this point. I don't think the jury is written down. The jury's not out yet on that.
So, like, what if the Bears go 6-6 the rest of the way, 500 the rest of the way? They'd be 7-10. They'd be out of the playoffs. A, does that feel possible, or am I being way too generous? And B, do you feel like you're satisfied with 2023 if that's the case?
6-6 the rest of the way feels a little generous. They got the Lions twice, the Packers again still. They got the Browns. They've got the Vikings again, the Saints, the Chargers. There's a handful of teams in there that feel a bit out of the Bears league right now.
Okay.
But I think we've said all along entering this season that to me, the measure of success this year was not going to be, do they reach X number of wins? It's really like, how do they look? How does it
like? Does it feel like they're a team? Yeah.
Does it feel like they've made progress? Does it feel like the young players that are supposed to be the foundation of this team are getting better and look the way they're supposed to look? Because we knew this team had really significant deficiencies on the defensive line and some questions on the offensive line and across the defense really as a whole, to that this was not going to be a team that goes on a surprise playoff run. So whether it's 6 wins, 7 wins, or 8 wins, not that important to me. It's more important to answer, is Justin Fields the guy? Are these young defensive backs the long-term answers there? Do all the pieces look like they're fitting so that next year you can really go all in on 2024 and go in on a run? And it feels like we've gotten a lot of no answers to that so far, but I guess there is time for the rest of the season to really turn that around. But it would take a lot of better coaching than we've seen up to this point, and a lot of guys playing a lot better. And sure, that does happen sometimes, but we've now seen a year and a half of this coaching staff, and it's sort of hard to trust that all of a sudden everything's really going to click and they're going to figure out and sustain success.
That makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of individual stuff going on here too that is going to be interesting, especially with Justin Jefferson out, how the secondary is going to be tested now, and how Justin Fields will handle the blitz, how the Vikings, if they're going to be able to run the ball, which is something I know they're going to try to do more now that JJ is out. There's all kinds of matchups and just kind of general stuff that we still have to get into on this Crossover Thursday episode. Today's Crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Vikings and Locked On Bears is brought to you by PrizePicks. You can go to prizepicks.com and play daily fantasy made easy. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of putting in an entire lineup and say you just have a prediction about what a couple of quarterbacks are going to do, you can just play with those quarterbacks instead of having to also then fill out a lineup with a flex and a tight end and a kicker and all kinds of other stuff, and then entering a pool with 600,000 people and hoping you get lucky. That's not fun. PrizePicks is fun. I've been playing PrizePicks every week this year and having a blast doing it. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl and you can use code LOCKEDONNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl, code LOCKEDONNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Thanks for making Locked On Vikings and Locked On Bears your first listen today and hopefully every single day. As we get closer to kickoff, Locked On Podcast Network is kicking up our coverage with NFL Kickoff Live. Every Friday, Locked On, it goes live at 1 o'clock Central Time on every Locked On NFL YouTube channel. They're live on Locked On Vikings. They're live on Locked On Bears, with breaking down every game on the NFL slate to get you ready for your team's matchup, your fantasy lineups, your betting angles, and more. We got in-depth local analysis from our stable of NFL hosts across the country who know these teams better than anyone else. Find Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 1 o'clock Central Time on any Locked On NFL YouTube channel. I'm sure they'll be getting into Bears-Vikings this week. Might hear a little bit from one or both of us on the Locked On NFL Live kickoff this week. And some big matchups in this game. Sans Justin Jefferson. Bears also at the same time getting a little healthier in the secondary. Jalen Johnson's supposed to return. Kyler Gordon is practicing and may be activated from injured reserve to be the slot again. Eddie Jackson could even be back. They could go from having 4 backups in the secondary to maybe none this week, which would be a big welcome return for the Bears. Do you look there for matchups as far as a receiver for the Vikings to stand out, or
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So my guess is that the Vikings are going to dial up a lot more for Jordan Addison. Kevin O'Connell has had a lot of great things to say about Jordan Addison. He's had some explosive plays. But if you watch him on the tape, there are a lot of instances where he struggles with more physical coverage, either straight up press or even catch technique down the field. Fighting through contact, not going to be his thing. Wasn't his thing in college either. So the question is, who's the corner that does that? Who's the most physical corner on the Bears? And did the Bears shadow? I don't know what they're doing with Eberflus defensively. How do they get that guy on Jordan Addison? I think that's the best way that they can give him trouble.
The Bears haven't been healthy enough to shadow this season, and certainly.
Okay. Did they play sides then?
There was a decent number of
with
injuries.
Their corners.
Say that again.
Do they play sides then with their corners?
Yeah, for the most part. So
okay.
Every once, depending on formationally, like they'll move like guys. Like sometimes they'll just if you're bunched to one side and it's just a tight end on the other side, they'll bring that corner to the other side. Just let them play the slot on that side. Like they're not like mandatory stuck in their sides per se, but for the most part, that's how they're going to play it. And both Jalen Johnson and Tyreek Stevenson are guys who tend to be better in that physical coverage. It's not always press right at the line of scrimmage. They play a lot of off coverage that I don't particularly love, but like when they can be physical up the route stem and really kind of contest the catch point downfield and be in that sort of trailing man-to-man coverage, that seems to be where these guys are most comfortable. We just don't see it as much. The Bears really do sit up pretty bland coverage-wise. It's mostly cover 3 and cover 2. Although last week against the Commanders was the first week Matt Eberflus blitzed more than like 10% of his snaps. They were up to like 30% blitz against Sam Howell just to get some pass rush going. So maybe that and most of that is out of a single deep shell for the most part there. But otherwise, it's pretty basic coverage-wise, and that's why we've seen this team collapse in some second halves, just because I think the first half quarterbacks.
Yeah, you find it.
Yeah, quarterbacks are trying to figure out what they're doing, and then second half they're still doing the same things. But it's like, oh, okay, single deep safety is probably going to be cover 3. They don't run a ton of man coverage, and 2 deep safeties, it's probably going to be cover 2. They don't do a ton of quarters or 6, and it becomes a little bit easier to kind of figure out what they're going to do defensively and gash that, even without somebody like Justin Jefferson out there.
That's interesting. I think that is something that the Vikings would then be able to take advantage of if Eberflus doesn't want to go get physical with Jordan Addison, who is very clearly has that weakness and it shows all over his tape. I've got some breaking news I think you're going to like. So the Vikings finally made the transaction, officially put Justin Jefferson on IR, and N'Keal Harry and Tristan Jackson are elevated to the active roster, not just for game day, signed to the actual active roster. Now they had a couple of receivers on IR, so they needed both of them. But good old pal, N'Keal Harry, revenge game now, baby.
Yeah, all of a sudden it's a big revenge game. I thought you were going to talk about the Republicans nominating a new Speaker of the House there. So I was wondering where you were going.
No, I didn't even know about that. I'll have to look at
Big
that.
breaking news. But no,
big breaking news. Yeah,
Harry revenge game against his briefly former team,
against his former like borrowed destination.
I think Bears fans are just hoping he can pull an Amir Smith-Marset and just hand the game back to his former team.
Yeah, there we go. That was it. Hey, returning kicks over in Carolina now, Amir Smith-Marset.
Wow.
And he got himself a ring. So who got the last laugh truly?
He was with the Chiefs, wasn't he? Yeah. What there?
He was on, I think he was active for some game in the playoffs at least.
Wow.
As like a game day elevation.
It's, crazier things have happened. Well,
Yeah.
and so one of the other areas I'm concerned about in this game is the Vikings pass rush and really the blitzing in particular from Brian Flores.
Yeah, that's the next thing.
Yeah, the Bears have played defensive coordinators already this season that take a somewhat similar. I mean, they all do it in different ways, right? But that sort of aggressive style in terms of Todd Bowles in Tampa Bay and then Steve Spagnuolo in Kansas City, and of course Brian Flores is his own flavor of that. But the Bears have at times struggled with that, and at times pick it up really nicely. And it's just been sort of I think it's been a matter of how it's more about the Bears having their stuff together versus the defensive coordinator tricking them or throwing something unexpected at them, in the sense where it's like when the Bears,
that's the test of those defenses. Yeah.
It's just because somebody missed assignment, somebody just like had the snap count wrong, somebody didn't slide where they were supposed to, or the running back just whiffed on a block. Like, it's not like, oh man, what a great call, they absolutely totally surprised the Bears there. It's just like guys are making individual mistakes where it's like if everybody just did what they were supposed to do on the play, it wouldn't be as much of a problem. But instead, somebody along the way gets their job wrong, gets their assignment wrong, or just can't execute what they're being asked to do. And that's when it becomes a little bit of a problem. I will say, though, against the Commanders this past week, there were a few different times when blitzes were coming and Justin Fields was all over it. There was one play where the center snapped it on the first count instead of the second, so nobody moved when he was the only one to move when he snapped the ball, and then
goodness,
half-second delay before the whole line starts moving. So there's free rushers coming off of both edges, and Fields like stayed in and hit a tight window slant route to DJ Moore behind it, threw it like early with anticipation, which is like not something he does very well. And so like there's a certain confidence that he's had over these last two games to where if the Vikings do blitz him, and which we're expecting them to, like, he may be a little bit more prepared and confident to stand in there and throw and take it, as opposed to previous Justin Fields iterations that might be a little bit more panicky or hold on to the ball too long or try and escape it or do something or just try and do too much instead of just taking what's there.
That has been like, I've had this game circled as a Justin Fields draft supporter, as this is going to be like a test where I will finally really see what Justin Fields can do against those kinds of things, because, to be honest, it shares a lot of DNA with Todd Bowles. So it's going to be a lot of similar looks. It's not the same like blitzes, but it has a similar philosophy to the way that Todd Bowles dials those up, with a lot of who's coming, who isn't kind of stuff. Whereas like Spagnuolo will like blitz off we'll try to blitz someone that isn't in the protection a lot. And that's sort of that philosophy, a lot of different ways to do it. But it is going to be, when things get quickened up, when your process has to get quickened up, when everything has to get a lot tighter than it was before, can you survive? And a lot of the teams that the Vikings have played, the answer to that has been yes. With the Chargers, yeah, they were absolutely able to survive. I mean, Mahomes and the Chiefs, yeah, of course, right? Bryce Young and the Panthers, it was a no, and that offense couldn't get in the end zone. Their only touchdown was a pick six. So that is truly the question of, can Justin Fields, it's like the matchup is Justin Fields versus Brian Flores, can he diagnose what's happening? I don't think the Bears are going to just pick up every blitz, right? There's going to be free rushers. It's designed to guarantee free rushers, sort of at the cost of totally leaving your coverage, hanging your coverages out to dry. So can Justin Fields find it fast, get the ball out fast, get the ball out accurately? And it's not a question that has had a very good answer over the last 3 years, which is why I'm looking at this like this is a good strategy to go approach this particular team with. But if Justin Fields can go, complete 80% of his passes, even if they're all short because they all have to be dump offs because there's free rushers all day, that's a good result.
The game plan against the blitz is going to be find DJ Moore, right? Run routes to where if there's a deficiency in coverage, make sure that DJ Moore is running something that's going to be open quickly, right? If the blitz is coming,
that'll be fascinating against Byron Murphy, who's been very good at slants, and he's been a good corner. He's played really, really well. And DJ Moore, he's a smaller guy, right? Or am I crazy?
6 foot. I mean, he's not big, but he's not tiny,
Yeah, so he's not the 6'4", let's just lob one up and take advantage of Byron Murphy's size kind of guys. I think that'll be a good matchup. I think that's actually pretty even.
Like one of the go-tos has been like a really quick double move, right? Just enough to get somebody to bite on it and then throw it vertical even when the blitz is coming. So I look for the double move has really been kind of the big,
oh man, the double move wide open touchdown. I feel it.
It's coming, and hey, that's going to have a big swing on how the final score of this game ultimately comes together. We'll go through what these two teams still need to do to win, as well as a prediction on who wins and by how much, coming up next on this crossover Thursday, Locked On Bears, Locked On Vikings.
Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical, and in particular, their Jase case, which gives you 5 life-saving antibiotics that you can have on standby, ready to use in an emergency. There's no excuse not to be prepared for any kind of emergency, and we live in a different world than we used to, with storms, supply shortages, things that can stop you from being able to get to the store, or if you get to the store, the thing you need, they might be out of. So make sure you have it on hand right away and that you are prepared for all kinds of emergencies. It's super easy to get a Jase case. You just go online to jasemedical.com, fill out a form, and then you get a prescription. Maybe you have to call a board certified physician and talk to them a little bit, but then you will get a prescription and get some life-saving medications delivered right to your door. You can get $20 off of these life-saving antibiotics today from Jase Medical by using code LOCKEDON at checkout at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com.
As we start to wrap up our crossover Thursday, Locked On Bears, Locked On Vikings podcast, Luke, I want to take this a slightly different direction because I think it's more fun. And normally it's like, okay, you tell me what your team has to do to win, and I'll tell you what my team has to win, and then we'll give our predictions. You tell me what the Bears need to do to beat in this game, and then I'll tell you what the Vikings need to do to beat the Bears.
So I guess it's reiterating what we talked about, because I think the Bears can win. I think any team can beat the Vikings if they, without JJ, if you press Jordan Addison physically, dominate him physically, and survive the blitz. If you pick up the blitzes, anyone can beat the Vikings. Alcorn State can beat the Vikings if they pick up the blitzes. And it's just schematically, right? Because we'll just have too many guys in man coverage. If that's a long pocket, you're just never going to hold up for 3 or 4 seconds. Now, I don't think Alcorn State can pick up the blitzes, and I'm skeptical if the Bears can pick up the blitzes too. And the other, I guess, threat that is worth paying attention to is TJ Hawkinson, who I haven't talked about yet. So you have to have an answer for him on choice and middle search and sticks and sort of the underneath 1st and 10, get 6 yards and set up a manageable 2nd down kind of plays. And I think if you can check off all 3 of those boxes, that is where the Bears can win. But it's I think up to you to determine. It's up to the Bears to determine how they can do that and who they trust with those assignments.
You think you can check 2 of them and still win, or do you need to do all 3?
I don't think you can check 2 of them and still win. I think if you let the blitzes get to you, right, and Justin Fields is just going to have a nightmare day, and that's just going to be the game. And I think if you let Jordan Addison free release all day, I think he is going to be able, I think he can be a wide receiver 1, but not all the time. Only against secondaries that aren't physical with him. But then he can do that. He was streaking open all day against the Chiefs. And they were focusing so much on Justin Jefferson that it gave him a lot of more opportunities to do that. So that's obviously not a problem this time for you guys. And the Vikings have won games in the past where Justin Jefferson was doubled, tripled, taken away, but TJ Hawkinson got 150 yards.
Yeah, especially when the margin of error is going to be a little low for the Bears in this game. Because I think for the Vikings to win this game, can it be as simple as if the Vikings have 0 turnovers, they win this game? I mean,
For sure.
maybe that's
That's the thing we haven't talked about yet. They've fumbled away. They've fumbled on their opening, or they've turned it over their opening possession on 3 of 5 games. Every single, and I think they give a touchdown on the way back, like every time too.
Jeez.
Every single time. One of them was a 99-yard pick six. Opening drive, go all the way down to the goal line, throw a pick six on the 1 yard line, and it gets housed. And then a fumble against the Chiefs, and a fumble. I think it was the Eagles was the other one where it was fumbled right away. Or maybe it was the Bucks. I think they're minus like 9 in the turnover battle right now. God. They have torpedoed themselves with turnovers. If you exclude turnovers, they would be like a top 10 team. But you can't exclude turnovers because they're the worst mistakes you make. It is infuriating, and it is absolutely the kind of thing. Like when I say the Vikings can lose to anybody or they can beat anybody, they can lose to anybody if they fumble enough. And boy howdy, did they fumble enough.
So I did want to ask, like, not all fumbles and turnovers are created equal, right? Like sometimes it's defensive player makes a great play to jump up and intercept the ball, or comes in and makes a great peanut punch to force a strip. And sometimes it's quarterback was dumb and should have thrown it away or held onto the ball too long or threw a poor ball.
Yeah, it's bad ball security. It's holding it. It's not holding it high and tight. It's one arm, not getting 2 hands on the ball when you're getting hit. Not getting 2 hands on the ball fast enough. I mean, yeah, this is not a couple guys have made great plays against us. And this is like a real problem that the Vikings have tried and failed to fix. They drill it all the time. They've made a huge emphasis out of it. Hey guys, we have to stop fumbling. And it's a different guy every time too. So it's just killer.
Yeah. The Bears have been pretty bad at generating turnovers this season, but against the Commanders, it started. And these things tend to kind of wax and wane and come in bunches. So maybe they got an interception from a guy named Greg Stroman, who may not be a known commodity to anybody else outside of the season, and a forced fumble from rookie 5th-round pick cornerback Terrell Smith. So guys just kind of stepped up and made plays here and there. And if the Vikings can that, like the Vikings just need to not beat themselves in this game. If they can just take it easy, run the ball, take what the defense gives you in the passing game, you'll get plenty of yards. You'll be in the red zone enough, and you can score touchdowns to get field goals. And then defensively, like, I think the blitzing is going to have a pretty good effect there. And as long as you can sort of like stay on top of everything, it's not like it's going to be, I don't think it has to be anything too crazy here. Like, just don't make the catastrophic mistake, the leaving DJ Moore wide open on a double move in the end zone kind of thing. Like, if you just if you don't get in your own way as the Vikings team, you should be in a good position to win. It's just, they're one of the best in the league at getting in their own way. And that's,
they will absolutely do some of that. And this will be a 1 score. The Vikings have not had a non-1 score game since the last time they played the Bears.
Well, maybe that means so too, right?
That's the last time they were in Soldier Field, last January. So they had 1 score game in the playoffs and 5 in a row 1 score games. It's just what they do. If they get a lead, they let you back in. If they get behind, they will make a comeback. It's just what they do.
So where does that leave you feeling a potential final score here? What's your prediction for the game?
Well, where's the spread? Are the Vikings favored on the road here?
Yeah, by 3 points.
By 3 points? That feels about right. I do think the Vikings can take this win. And a lot of that is just me having paid more attention to the Bears than usual because I'm interested and not really been happy with what I'm seeing. Even without Justin Jefferson, they can still run the ball. The offensive line has been humming, and they've been humming in pass protection too. Cousins will have time. And I think that this is a team that they can do it. I don't know how often they can do it for the rest of the year, but I do think that they can do it, win by 3 or 4. That spread feels about right.
And I just double checked on FanDuel. It's moved to 2.5. So it was
2.5. Well, yeah, probably moved down a good bit, or that. I would have expected to move more without Justin Jefferson, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, Vikings by 3. Vikings win and cover. Let's go. Great teams cover.
That's kind of where I'm at too. Like, even though the Bears beat the Commanders, like, they still need to prove to me that they can win football games consistently. 1 win was great, but not enough to be like, oh, okay, everything's solved. Then now they can beat.
Now you're not historic.
Yeah. Yes, I think they should beat the Vikings. They are fully capable of beating the Vikings, and so they can prove to me. I mean, they were supposed to beat the Broncos too, right? It's like after that loss to the Broncos and absolutely choking a huge lead, like, I can't trust them until they really prove it to me, and I still need a little bit more proof. Even though weird things happen when the Bears and Vikings play at Soldier Field, I still 3 points feels about right to me, like a 27-24 kind of final score.
Oh no, it's going to be a Soldier Field 13-16 snooze fest game. While it's the greatest red zone week ever, and we don't get to watch it. That's what's going to be the result here.
That is, yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
that's good. It's going to happen.
Maybe 20-17 feels a little bit, because you're right. Without Justin Jefferson, I don't think we're going to see as much of a shootout, and I think Vikings defense will.
It's slop fest, whole bunch of turnovers, botched snaps, punts.
We just need some bad weather to really kind of tie this whole thing together.
Yeah, it needs to be muddy out. One of these, like, and for a while you'll be like, oh, this is great grindy football, and then by like the third quarter you just want to gouge your eyes out.
Well, that's been the whole season. So by the third quarter, you're ready to gouge your eyes out. So maybe that's a good place to leave it. Let's hope we're not gouging our eyes out this week. Luke, it's been a fun crossover as always. Make sure you tune in to Locked On Vikings and Locked On Bears every single day for your daily Bears or Vikings fix of more goodies for you, previewing the game on tomorrow's podcast, and we'll recap what happens afterward on Monday. So thanks for making us your first listen, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.